kiss for you.
Hey, so today I really want to be talking about kind of the reprioritization chip market and how that's really going at the moment. And I really want to talk about, I guess, where the whole market's going. And this is mainly brought up by the Google Pixel 6 launch announcement teaser, what do you want to call it, a couple days ago, and kind of the chip that they're going with on their new phones. So basically, if you didn't know, the Google Pixel 6 is going to have a new Tensor chip, which is basically Google's proprietary custom silicon that all the other chip makers are starting to go with. Apple has their A series processor. Google's now going to have the Tensor chip. Huawei has their Kirin chips. Samsung has their Exynos chips, right? Everyone is slowly going towards these proprietary systems. So as you can see, a part of their marketing is their A14 Bionic chip and how it rocket past every other smartphone chip and how it helps with photography and all that stuff and performance. And Google is trying to do the same thing. And I think that a lot of this is hinging on the fact that obviously the chip shortage is important factor, and Qualcomm and all these other normal chip makers are having a hard time producing up chips, and they also don't want to be as dependent on one supplier. They want to kind of do it themselves for a number of reasons. One is obviously not being dependent on that supplier. Another one is being able to keep more of the profit for themselves and ultimately be more cost efficient as well. The 8, what are we at now? Because we were at like 55, 6, 888, right? Wasn't that the last chip like last year? Because I don't think there's been a new chip. Yeah, 888 was in a bunch of phones, but it was not in a bunch of phones because a lot of phones aren't really using it, right? Google's using their own stuff, Apple's using their own stuff, Huawei and Samsung are most of the time using their own stuff. Very little phones that are actually using the 888 for a number of reasons, as I've said, but also because it's been more expensive, right? It's been a lot more cost to make these chips, especially with the chip shortage, and so companies like Google are saying, hey, why don't we just put our own chip in it? It can be cheaper, it can be less dependent, and we can control stuff more, the stack, right? Custom Tensor chip, 2 versions, pretty typical for that. All the updates and stuff, as you can see, hopefully this is recording. The normal 6 will have 64 AMOLED, 8 gigs RAM, normal stuff. Looks like a different rear camera, which is nice, at least for the normal. Wow, 50, that's quite a bit higher. And the Pro is a better screen, more RAM, a little bit bigger battery, but the Tensor chip is really what I want to be focusing on, and it's the fact that a lot of these companies are moving towards a reprioritization, as in custom-made priority stuff. And while that's great for them and can be great for us, as you probably know, Apple's A14 chips are much better than the competition because they've been able to make their own silicon, they've been able to make their own sort of stack, if you will, about like comparing them. They have their processor, their software, their cameras and stuff all working together, and I guess that's something you can't really do when you have a Qualcomm or when you have a MediaTek or any of these other ones, is you can't combine them, and that's why Android has been kind of lagging behind in terms of performance compared to like Apple and stuff. That's ultimately why you can see the Google Pixel 6 and 6 Pro big performance boost. As they can see from Apple, if you do it right, combining everything like you did, you can have much better results in terms of performance, CPU performance, gaming performance, and just generally a better experience having an integrated chip versus a separated chip. And what that ultimately does is segments the market, right? It kind of breaks away the phones that use special chips from the ones that don't use special chips, which is a good thing and a bad thing. The reason I'm worried about it, from Google's perspective, is the fact that they're not really great at keeping up with their promises of making their phones functional. If you're not aware, the Pixel 3 and XL, they're having random shutdowns that are happening across the globe. They're randomly shutting down, and Google hasn't been able to fix it, has been updating it as they should. So there's been a bunch of complaints about random shutdown issues, random battery issues, clicking noises, that kind of stuff, and Google isn't able to fix it. Apple has this too, obviously. They have issues and bugs and stuff, but they're pretty active about fixing it because they have that tight integration. Google really doesn't, at least in these devices, and so hopefully the idea is that, it'll get better once they integrate it. And that's just dependent on if they do, right? Because Apple does, Google might, Huawei really doesn't, and Samsung really doesn't, right? The Exynos stuff doesn't really integrate well with Samsung devices. It's kind of just there. There's not a real reason that Exynos W920, I guess, is the current version, or 2100. But basically, right, these don't integrate that well other than having some cool like integrated 5G or whatever features with their phones. It's not enabling them to have better cameras, really. It's not enabling them to do a lot of the processing systems that the A14 can do. And so they're not really using their chip to the highest advantage, and that's why in a lot of markets like US and I think Canada, they don't use Exynos. They use Snapdragon because it's better for their chips, doesn't overheat as much, and they use this in like other countries like Europe and stuff where it's not as important for some reason. But yeah, this is a case where they make their own silicon, but it's not really integrated. Apple's is super integrated, and so Google's kind of just in this weird location where it's not as integrated. It's integrated with the cameras. We know that. It's going to help them boost the cameras. It might boost management of data and stuff, so to like help battery life, but we don't really know how well it's going to be implemented into the actual phone itself. And I guarantee there's going to be bugs and issues. It's the first time they're doing this, right? And so they're trying something new, and that's good. But more and more people trying something new doesn't always mean that it's working out or it's going to be a good thing. It just means everyone is moving towards this future. When they started removing the headphone jack, when they started figuring out how to remove the notch, when they removed the IR blaster and other features, right? When they focused all their efforts on cameras. All these movements aren't necessarily a good thing. They're just whatever the market is actually doing at the time. And it's under the fact that this is going to be very hard to have a say in your phone. Now, the right to repair stuff, it's not going to be a worry about repairing. It's more of a worry about failure, right? How well are these companies going to be able to change and adapt their processing to these custom silicon chips? Because similar with the performance indicators of like the ARM, the M1 chips that Apple made, there's issues. It's great, it's fantastic, it's much better from a transition perspective than we thought, but there's still issues in it that isn't fully figured out yet. So let's just compare it to like a Ryzen 5 3600X. Yeah, so as you can see here from the performance or whatever, right, it's not really a performance problem, it's more like how compatible is it, right? And luckily you don't have to worry about that too much with phones, but still a question of compatibility, a question of just general like sustainability, right? How well are these going to be sustained across the long term? If Google's having problems with this stuff on their 3-year-old devices, how well is it going to work on something that they theoretically have more control over, which is this new Tensor chip? So that's what I wanted to talk about, is kind of the evolution of that and where I think it's going. If you have comments and thoughts about it, make sure you leave it down in the description and stuff. I really want to hear your thoughts really about where this is going. I believe that it's going to go here first. It's going to evolve, and then it's going to shut back down when people realize, at least some of them realize, that it's not really profitable. And that's really what's happening with Samsung, right? They're in that market. They went to Exynos for a very long time. They then shut down Exynos when you realized it wasn't working. They were using Snapdragon. They brought back Exynos with the 2100. We're like, this is great. And then they immediately abandoned ship when they realized it wasn't working. This is a proof example. Apple didn't. They doubled down. They went through their issues or whatever, and they eventually got really good at it and just kept iterating. And now we'll see what Google does. So yeah, I'll see everyone in the next video.